Welcome back, everybody. In this video, I'm going to show you the correct way to attack your opponent's castled king with your pawns. If you're anything like me in the past, I just used to push the pawns blindly towards my opponent's king. I thought this was what I should be doing, but there is actually a right way to do this. And in this video, I'm going to give you two specific methods, two things to look out for when you're pushing pawns, when you're trying to attack your opponent's castled king. You've probably heard the first method before, but I'm going to bet that you have not considered the second one, so let's jump into it. The first thing to look out for when you are attacking with your pawns is to look for hooks. Now, hooks are situations where pawns have been pushed in front of the king. So on a3, we have the white pieces. On a3, we have a hook. Ideally, black wants to attack that hook with a pawn. If black were to play g6, this would also be a hook. We would want to play h4 and h5, attack that hook with our pawns. The reason we do this is that we want to trade off pawns because that is going to open up more files and more diagonals towards the opponent's king. That is going to help us in our attack. Now, instead of playing b5 and b4, black unfortunately played the move h6 here. As you can already guess, in this position with white, we are going to play the move g5. We are going to attack this hook. Now, it's very important to note that when you're attacking a hook, it is incredibly powerful if you're not only attacking a pawn in front of the king, but also attacking a piece. If you can attack both of these at the same time, this is going to be very, very powerful because it's going to force your opponent to clear out this pawn tension somehow. If they capture, that's good. We can capture back with the bishop. Now we have the semi-open file for our queen. Maybe we'll swing the rook over. And additionally, now if we can ever get rid of this h2 pawn, we can push it, trade it off. Then we'll also have the open file for our rook. That's fantastic. The only other option here for black after we play g5, if they don't want to capture this pawn, is to move this knight. Otherwise, we're obviously going to take it. So after something like knight h5, we can capture this pawn in h6. Again, we've created the semi-open file against the opponent's king. We are activating our pieces even more. We can swing a rook over, and we have created a lot of new avenues for the attack. We're building up a ton of pressure. Let's look at a very, very similar position to the one we had here. So you'll see this position, it's very, very similar, but there's one minor difference here. With this position, we don't have a knight on f6. So if we play g5, which is what we usually want to do, we want to attack this hook. Unfortunately, our opponent is going to play h5 here. And now if they can play g6 on the next move, they're actually going to have a pretty solid pawn chain that's going to be very hard for us to break through. So instead, sometimes, instead of just attacking this hook, we can actually play h5 first. So here, if we play h5, now when we play g5 on the next move, we're going to ensure that we can break up this pawn structure somehow. Again, if they capture, we'll be able to recapture. And if they let us capture, then we're just opening up more files towards the king. Let's look at some example moves of how black might respond here. They really want to stop us from playing g5. So maybe they try knight g5, but this is going to run into f4. We're kicking the knight away. On the next move, we're going to play g5, and we're going to force open this pawn structure in front of the king. Instead, if black tries f6, really trying to clamp down on this g5 square, again, we have f4. We'll play g5 on the next move, and we're just trying to open up more files towards the king. We're going to force open this pawn structure. Instead, if black plays something more normal, like let's say bishop c6, now we can finally get away with playing g5. If black captures, we'll recapture with the bishop, and you can see we've opened up the g file for our queen. If we trade here, no problem. We'll bring the other rook over. We can play h6. We've got a lot of different avenues here to attack our king. And instead, if our opponent doesn't capture this pawn, then we're going to capture ourselves, right? So let's say maybe our opponent goes king h8. Now we'll capture ourselves. Note that black cannot capture back because we're going to take that pawn. And again, we've just opened up more avenues towards the king. We're finding ways to crash through the opponent's pawn structure, break through, and get to the king. Before I jump into the second method, I've got to mention that there are three ways that pawn tension can be released. So when two pawns are looking at each other diagonally and they can capture each other, there are three ways that pawn tension can be cleared. First, you could capture the pawn. Second, you could push past the pawn. Or number three, you could do nothing. You could leave the pawn there and keep the tension. So the second method for using your pawns to attack your opponent's king correctly is to look for situations where you can create pawn tension, and no matter how the tension is released, it positively transforms the position for you. So here we've got the white pieces here. This comes from a real game that I had, and there are two ways to create good pawn tension here. There's a6 and there's b5. Evaluate both of these moves, Figure out which one is better in this position. If you chose the move b5, black is just going to leave this c6 pawn here. They're just going to leave the tension and ignore it. They're going to play bishop d6. We're going to be forced to trade off these bishops. And now once we capture here, black will recapture with the pawn. And black's king is exposed. White is still doing well here. But this position is not as crushing as if we had played a6. So now let's look at a6. After we play a6, there is no good way for black to clear up this pawn tension. If black captures on a6 or plays b6, then we have queen takes c6, that's checkmate. So that means that black has to keep this pawn here. They have to keep the pawn tension alive. So if black makes a nothing move, let's say they play knight f6, then we're going to capture with check. After the king recaptures, we have got a lot of good ideas here. One idea is to play bishop a6 check. The king cannot drop back to a8 because then we'll take this pawn with the queen with checkmate. So instead, after king b6, we're going to play c4 and then c5. This is not going to lead to checkmate immediately, but black is going to have to sacrifice a ton of material just to stave it off. It's already plus 10 here. The even more beautiful move instead of bishop a6 check is, I'll let you pause the video and try to find it. White's best move in this position, I hope you're able to find it. This move is absolutely killer. The move is rook takes a7 check. Black's only real option is to capture this rook, accept the sacrifice, but now we have queen takes c6. Notice that we're completely cutting off the king, also covering this b8 square. Don't forget about the bishop. And if black allows it, we're going to play rook a1 on the next move. That's going to be checkmate. We have mate in 7 moves here, and all black can really do is just play something like queen a5 and just delay mate for a couple more moves. As another example position, we've got the white pieces here. Again, this came from a real game that I had, and we have 2 ways to create useful pawn tension. We've got a4 and we've got b3. Again, pause the video, evaluate each of these moves, figure out which one is better. As with the last example position, the best move here is to strike with the a pawn. So b3 is not a bad move, that's for sure, but generally, this is a great piece of chess wisdom actually, it's better to attack the base of a pawn chain than the tip of a pawn chain. So b3 is good. After black captures, we can recapture. This opens up our file for the rook, that's positive. If black leaves the pawn here, then we're going to capture and we're going to win a pawn. That's good as well. But a4 is going to be even stronger. This is an even better option because if we can attack the base of the pawn chain, then the pawns in front of it are going to fall apart also. It's going to destroy the entire pawn structure. Instead, if you just attack the tip of the pawn chain, that's all you're going to destroy. It's just that front pawn. If you attack the base, then you have the possibility of destroying the whole structure. So a4, best move here. If black captures this pawn or plays b4, this weakens the c4 pawn. We can take that with check. That's fantastic. And instead, if black plays something like bishop d6 because they want to leave the pawn tension, then we're going to capture here. And after black recaptures, we're going to have the open file for our rook. This is a fantastic transformation of the position, and we have gained lots of new attacking files here. If you found these tips useful so far, give this video a thumbs up and also consider subscribing. Let's jump back to the hooks for 1 second. Now, keeping our second method in mind, i.e. pushing pawns such that no matter how the pawn tension is cleared, it positively transforms the position for us, let's look at this move g5 again. This move actually aligns with that second method, right? If black pushes past, then we're going to capture this knight. Instead, if black does nothing, they leave the pawn tension and they move the knight, then we're going to capture. We're happy with that. The only other option, if black captures themselves, we recapture. Again, we've got the semi-open file and we're happy. So this second method is really a fantastic way of thinking about how you want to push your pawns and how you want to create pawn tension in front of your opponent's king. You want to find positions and situations where no matter how that pawn tension is cleared, it's going to help your position. It's going to open files towards your opponent's king. Remember that when we're pushing pawns in front of the opponent's king, we're not trying to deliver checkmate with them. We're trying to create space for our pieces, and we're trying to open up more diagonals, more files, more avenues of attack for our pieces so that we can then deliver checkmate. I hope you found this video useful. I hope the tips sink in and help you learn exactly how you should be attacking your opponent's king with pawns. That second method is actually a realization that I very recently had, so I wanted to make a video about it just to share that wisdom with everyone else. In the meantime, check out some other videos.